Hello, and welcome to this BYU Family History Library webinar, which is the third webinar in this third part series talking about finding England and Wales wills online. If you weren't here for the first and second webinars, in the first webinar, we covered finding wills online for the Prerogative Court of Canterbury and the Prerogative Court of York, and finding principal probate registry wills post-1857 in webinar 2. Should you wish to see those, you can find them at BYU Family History Library. Click Classes and Webinars and choose Sunday Virtual Classes, where you will see Virtual Classes Archive, and then scroll down to the Foreign Countries classes, and the presentations are right there on the bottom in red. Today we'll be covering the local ecclesiastical courts pre-1858. The wills proved in local courts can be tricky to find. It's important to emphasize that we will be concentrating on the wills which can be found online. Some wills may not be available online and may have to be ordered from archives or accessed from the Family Search Library. Here is a chart from Find My Past showing the hierarchy of ecclesiastical courts. We have already covered the two prerogative courts identified in blue, and the peculiar courts, which are in green, are unique to certain small areas and sometimes just one parish, so we will not be covering them today. A definition of a peculiar court is it is historically referred to as an ecclesiastical court that was outside the jurisdiction of the ordinary secular courts. These courts were established by the Church of England and had a jurisdiction over certain legal matters pertaining to church law, such as probate, marriage, and morality issues. The two courts we will be focusing on are the Archdeaconry Court and the Consistory Court, also called the Bishop's Court, Episcopal Court, or Commissary Court. Pre-1858 probate records could be a will or a letter of administration, which is also known as an admon, with related documents. The information you will find varies from record to record. The records may provide names of heirs, other family members, witnesses who could be related, guardians, relationships, residencies, property names, and an inventory of the deceased's personal property. The Family Search Wiki states, while probate records are one of the most accurate sources of genealogical evidence, they must be used with caution. For example, they may omit the name of the eldest son who received his inheritance according to law. They could also omit the names of others who had previously received their inheritance, such as a daughter who received a dowry, or any deceased family members. They may mention children from a spouse's previous marriage, and they may mention a spouse who is not the parent of the children named. They can give inaccurate relationships of people mentioned in the document. One of the least helpful of these is using cousin or kinsman as a catch-all for various relatives. Up until 1858, probate in England and Wales was administered by over 300 Church of England ecclesiastical courts. They are often the only record for the time period before census records where all members of a family might be listed. They were recorded much earlier than birth, marriage, and death registration, as well as baptism, marriage, and burial information, and can fill in other information lacking in parish registers. They can give vital information such as occupations, land owned, and localities that the individual is associated with. Every county has their own way of dealing with the probate courts and the indexes associated with those courts. There is no cookie-cutter way to approach these. The first thing you need to establish when searching for pre-1858 probate records is the court in which the will was probated. Once you've figured out the court, you will need to check to see if there is an index. If you can find an index online, that is the most ideal. Often the index is at the beginning or at the end of the volumes of the wills themselves. I'm going to give examples of how to find the court, find indexes, and then find the image of the original will. We will start with the easy ones and work to the more difficult ones. For my first example, I'm going to be looking for a will for Richard Cross of Lydney, Gloucestershire, who was buried the 30th of September 1808. He was a yeoman. A yeoman is generally used to mean a farmer who owns his own piece of land, however small, as opposed to being a tenant farmer. Because he owned property, he may have made a will. As a preface to this search, although I have found some small wills for some of my ancestors who were agricultural labourers, it is more likely that you will find a will for an ancestor who had a trade, was a farmer, or who was a professional person. It is estimated that at least a quarter of the population of England either made a will or was mentioned in a will. The first thing we need to discover is which court proved the wills for the parish of Lydney. For this example, I'm going to use the Family Search Research Wiki to find the correct court. In the search bar, you will enter the county plus probate records. So for our purposes, I am going to put in Gloucestershire probate records. That will bring you to a page such as this, which gives information about the probate records in Gloucestershire. You can see 2/3 of the way down the page, there is a section that says before 1858, which is what I want. If you scroll further down in that section, notice there is a little box that has letter links to the various parishes in Gloucestershire. So we're going to click G to L to find the parish of Lydney. Here at the bottom of the G to L list, there is Lydney. You will see that the post-1541 probates were proved in the court of the Bishop of Gloucester, also known as the Episcopal or Consistory Court. When I click on that link, it takes me to a page with information on the court of the Bishop of Gloucester. On that page, under Online Indexes, it shows that the indexes and images of wills and inventories from 1541 to 1858 proved in that court are at Ancestry.com. Clicking on the Ancestry.com link takes me directly to the record set. Gloucestershire, England, Wills and Inventories, 1541 to 1858. I entered the name of Richard Cross, the year of his burial in 1808, and Lydney, Gloucestershire. I got 2 results, and the first one looks correct. Richard Cross, 1809, Aylburton, Lydney, Gloucestershire, England. When I click on View Record, I get more detail of the record showing that his will was proved the 14th of March, 1809, and that he was listed as a yeoman. Wills can sometimes take several years before they are proved, so don't discount a will that is proved sometime after the death. This one was only the next year after his death. By clicking the thumbnail, I can see an image of the actual will, and everything matched the information I already had. At this point, we won't take time to read the will. In my second example, I am not looking for a specific will, but for wills of a Coleman family who lived in Burton Overy, Leicestershire in the 1700s. I know this family was fairly prominent, so I expect to find several wills. In the first example, we used the Family Search Research Wiki to determine the court. This time, I'm going to use another, more visual method. I'm going to Ancestry.com in the card catalogue, and in the keyword search, I am entering Great Britain Atlas and Index of Parish Registers. When this screen comes up, I will choose the county of Leicestershire. And I get this visual map of Leicestershire. Not only does this map show all the parishes in Leicestershire, It also shows the contiguous counties, when the parish registers began, as well as color-coded court jurisdictions. Notice where the red is that Burton Overy is in the enclosed area that has a brown highlight. Here is a closer look. There is the parish of Burton Overy, and as you can see, the year the parish records were started was 1575. According to the legend on the left, brown means that wills from that area were proved in the court of the Archdeaconry of Leicester. Having been pleasantly surprised at how easy it was to find the will of Richard Cross of Lydney, Gloucestershire, I decided before I was going to try to find the wills of the Colemans the hard way, which I will show you in my next example, I was going to first check Ancestry.com and find my past to see if they happen to have an online index for the wills in Leicestershire. I struck out at Ancestry.com, but when I went to all record sets at Find My Past and entered Leicestershire, it came up with a record set, Leicestershire Wills and Probate Records, 1500 to 1939. I entered the name of Coleman and got 417 results. As a rule of thumb, I usually start with a very broad search. Many times when you narrow down your search too much, you will miss results you might need. As I look at the results, I already see some Colemans in Tour Langton, which is only a few miles from Burton Overy, that look interesting. I will probably revisit those at a later date. For now, I'm going to click on Residents and sort the results. Now, when I click on Residents, all the Colemans in Burton Overy are in one spot. One of the probates that really catches my eye is the one of Thomas Coleman in 1716. Here is the transcript, but I want to see the actual will. So I can click on the original image that we see, and here is the title page of the will, and then the actual will itself on the next page. In reading the will, it has some rich information on relatives of the testator, which I have outlined as shown. With this will being a little difficult to read, I have transcribed the biggest portion of it here, and you can see the 11 relatives mentioned highlighted in yellow. Blue means that Thomas had identified relationships, and green means a person who has been previously mentioned. No wife is mentioned in this will, which corroborates my research, which has his wife Anne being buried in 1702. Hopefully, from this example, you can see how finding a will can be such an invaluable genealogy tool. At this point in this presentation, I feel I should be eating my words because I said in previous webinars that finding pre-1858 probates was difficult. My experience finding wills in England goes back several years, and evidently time and technology have improved the ability to find these pre-1858 wills. These first two examples have been easy, and I had no idea when I started out with those scenarios that it was going to be that straightforward. As technology becomes more and more robust, we are probably going to see more indexes and will images online. In fact, I believe there are already projects in place to read and index wills with artificial intelligence. Soon, we will not only be able to find the names of the testator or testatrix, but also all the beneficiaries and others mentioned in the will. However, lest you think that I was fabricating the truth, I think this next example will live up to my previous statements about pre-1858 probates. This is the method I would recommend you use if you cannot find online indexes and/or will images. So hold on to your hats. For this example, I'm going to look for an ancestor who I suspect may have had a will, as he had a trade. He was a collar maker, a person who made the part of a horse harness known as a horse collar. My collar maker ancestor was called Thomas Maris. He died in 1823 and lived and was buried in Linton, Cambridgeshire. Due to the fact that Thomas died in 1823, I am going to be able to leverage a centralized index of death duties placed on the estates of deceased people that was levied in 1796. This index is found on Find My Past and covers the time period 1796 to 1903. By checking this, I will save myself time and find out if Thomas Maris did indeed leave a will. Here is a piece from BYU, Discovering English Ancestors, which talks about the death registers. It states, the search for probate records of a specific individual was made easier by the central government's tax levy or duty placed on estates of deceased persons that began in 1796. The result was a nationwide index that is online for 1796 to 1903 on findmypast.com. It is also on microfilm at the Family Search Library. This index includes wills and administration and abstracts of these records, as well as the name of the church court where the records were probated. Admittedly, the index is incomplete, but by 1815, the duty had been widened to cover the majority of estates. There are actually several indexes in this system. These death duty registers can also be found at Ancestry.com, but at Ancestry, the range is only from 1796 to 1811. So we will go back to Find My Past and go down to the quick links where it says All Record Sets, and click on that. Filter by England, and then in the search bar, begin to write Index to Death Duties. You see, I didn't have to write the whole thing, and the record set came up right on the right. Click on that and enter the information you are trying to find. In this case, I put Thomas Maris. I used the name variation on his first and last name, who died 1823, give or take 2 years, in Cambridgeshire. You can see I got 2 results. The first result looks correct. I looked at the transcription and it did seem correct. But on principle, I do not rely on transcriptions if I can see an original image. On the original image, you can see Thomas Maris of Linton and his beneficiary, Rebecca Maris, who I know was his wife. And also notice on the right an abbreviation of the court in which the will was proved. Cons Ely is what it says, which refers to the consistory court of Ely. Here's where I will get up on my soapbox. This is a very good example of the reason you always look at the original image if it is available or if you can find it. You will almost always find more information on the original, and errors in transcriptions are plentiful. However, for our purposes today, I'm going to pretend that we did not look at the original image, only at the transcribed version. Notice that the transcribed version does not list his wife, Rebecca, nor does it list a specific court. I am doing this so I can show you one more strategy for finding the court jurisdiction, and this one is probably the one I use most often. I'm going to the England Jurisdiction 1851 map found at the URL in red at the top of the slide. You will need to put in the parish you are interested in this case, Linton, Cambridgeshire, on the left, just above the search box. Here you see the boundaries of this parish. By clicking on the map pin, this box appears, and if you click on jurisdictions, it will give you the jurisdiction for the probate court. In this case, it is the court of the Bishop of Ely, Episcopal or Consistory. This interactive map is invaluable for research in England in many other ways. If you are unfamiliar with the England Jurisdiction 1851 map, view this 15-minute presentation detailing the map in the BYU instructional videos or at the URL on our YouTube channel. The next step is to look for indexes which will lead you to the will in the Consistory Court of Ely. I'm going to show you my preferred way to do this, and it's a little bit old school. First, you're going to go to the Family Search Catalogue and enter Register of pre-1858 Probates in the title field. When you click on the title, you will be brought to this page. Scroll down to the bottom of the page where you will see an itemized list of contents. Notice that Cambridgeshire is in volume number 4. You will go back up to volume number 4 and click on the link. It will take you to a digitized version of this binder, which was prepared by the staff of the Family History Library to aid in finding wills in England. It is invaluable. Click the box which says View Inside. The binders for each county are organized in pretty much the same way. The first thing you will see is a table of contents. The arrows circled in red will move you through the pages of the binder. Next, you will see the introduction page. After that, there will be various pages intended to help you identify the correct court. We already know which court to search, so rather than muddy the water, we will skip those pages. Here is a page which states the purpose of the binder. Then a couple of pages with instructions on how to use the register, which I would strongly recommend that you read. Here is a page that shows other resources. There is a glossary of probate terms which would be wise to refer to. Then comes a title page showing the Court of the Bishop of Ely. After that, there's a contents of the section of the Consistory of Ely. This is where we want to start. Next, a page shows the title of the indexes. Here is the first page of the indexes, but note that it doesn't go to the year that we are looking for, that is 1823. On the next page, you will see at the top the dates for the index are listed as 1765 to 1858. This is the one we need. If you look over to the right, it shows the contents of that index, and then on the far right, there is a film number where that index can be found on the Family Search Catalogue. Film 173464. Enter that film number into the Family Search Catalogue, and you will see the wills and administrations of the Diocese of Ely. Note that the very first entry is that film number we were looking for. However, notice also on the right that the film is locked. This film will have to be viewed at a Family Search Centre. Once you get to the film, you will see an all too familiar sight. A set of images you will have to scroll through until you find the right time period. This is what you are looking for, a page marking the right time period. This is on image 281. And on page 350, we find the letter M. Here marked in red is Thomas Maris. Note, toward the top of that column, it has the heading Liber K. Liber is Latin for book. Also note that next to Thomas Maris's name is the number 508. That is the folio or page where his will be found. Okay, with that information, our next task is to find the film with the actual will. We will go back to the binder and find the register of pre-1858 probates that we were looking at previously. We would need to find the section that has registered wills and find the correct date range. According to this, it says that Book K, which corresponds with the index, in the registered wills is on film number 173505. Also notice it also says that there is an index for Book K. Now we go back to the Family Search Catalogue again for film 173505. I found it on the same page where the index film was listed. Once again, we scroll through the film and find another image, 576. After that page, I find that there is another index listing Thomas Maris and showing that his will is found on page 508. So there is an index right before the wills. I scroll through the film once again, and here on page 508 at the top, and the will for Thomas Maris. Here is an enlarged image of the will. Here is a transcription of the will. It says, "The last will and testament of me, Thomas Maris of Linton, in the county of Cambridge, collar-maker. I do give my freehold shop and the tenement adjoining to my son John Maris, and the tenement adjoining to the house of Mr. William Day to my youngest son, Thomas Maris, and the yard and offices to them jointly. Signed by me this 27th day of May, 1823, the mark of Thomas Maris, in the presence of us, Edward Fisher, Vicar of Linton, William Day, and William Norden." Notice there is no punctuation in the will, nor did I put any punctuation in my transcription. This is fairly common and can sometimes make it hard to make sense of the will. This last paragraph of the will I am going to refer to shortly. Just out of curiosity, I did a search for an original will using the same method I have shown you. If there is a possibility of an original will as well as a registered will, I would want to check for both. On the National Archives UK site, it states, "Original wills, as opposed to the registered copies, are what the executor brought to the court to have proved. They are either the will as drawn up and signed by the testator, or a copy that was made before the notary of the court. Though they contain the same details as the registered copies, they can be easier to read." I wanted to try and see if I could find an original will. I looked in the binder under original wills in the court of the Bishop of Ely. I found the correct year range and the film 2214749. Again, I searched the film for the correct parameters, this time alphabetical by year. A word of caution here, even though it alludes to being alphabetical, it is not alphabetical by surname, just by the first letter of the surname. So all the M's will be grouped together, often according to the date the will was proved. This varies from collection to collection and from county to county, but it is something you need to be aware of. I found the original will. Here is the title page, and here is the actual will. Notice the piece included at the bottom of the registered will is missing here on the original will. I have emphasized the transcription of the last paragraph in red on the left. It reads, "Letters of administration of the goods, chattels, and credits of the testator, Thomas Maris, with the above will annexed, were granted to Rebecca Maris, his widow and relict, the said testator not having said by his said will bequeathed or disposed of any part of his personal estate, or appointed any executor thereof, the said Rebecca Maris being first sworn in due form of law before the Reverend Joseph Hall Clark, surrogate vicar. Effects sworn under £300. Because Thomas did not assign an executor for his will, a letter of administration was created, and Rebecca Maris, his widow, was granted the goods and chattels and the personal estate of her late husband. Whether this piece at the bottom of the registered will counts as that letter of administration or not, I don't know. My future task will be to search the administrations, just in case there is a separate document. It's important to notice that this will was written on the 27th of March, I believe, or May, was it? Anyway, and he was buried 3 days later, so it was probably written in haste. Here is the administration page from the binder, and here is the page giving details of how to find an administration for that time period, which I plan on researching in the future, see if I can find if there is a separate administration. I will be checking the film here, 186665. I'm sure some of you are wondering about wills in Wales. The process is basically the same as for England, but one or two of the resources are not as robust. To find a parish, the best way is to go to the Great Britain Atlas and Index of Parish Registers at Ancestry.com that we visited before. They have similar maps to the English maps, with the counties and parishes identified for South Wales, North Wales, and Central Wales. Unfortunately, the England Jurisdictions 1851 map does not work the same for Wales. And the Family Research Wiki refers you to search just in Wales, not the counties, for probate information. But it does list the counties and their corresponding courts. Ancestry.com has 282,099 records in their Wales Wills and Probate 1513 to 1858 collection. You need to search by the court and then add the personal information for the individual you are seeking. There is an index and there are corresponding images. Take extra care when searching and evaluating these probate records because so many Welsh names are the same. I did a search for William Morgan in the year 1642 in St. David's and got the following result of William Morgan on the 27th of May 1642 with an image of the will. Here is the image. It looks like a wonderful will. When I went to find my past, I also found a collection entitled Wales Probate 1544 to 1858. When I put in the same information, i.e. William Morgan 1642 St. David's, it gave me 9 results. I found the same William Morgan and found that instead of the images, I got an abstract of the will showing essential details and those people mentioned in the will. Using these two databases together would be very helpful. So, to sum up, the first strategy in finding a will is finding the court in which it was proved. Here are the 3 methods I recommended using. First, the England 1851 jurisdictions map. Second, the Ancestry.com card catalogue with the maps there. And lastly, the Family Search Wiki. The second strategy is to find an index, preferably online. Here are several resources we talked about to help you find indexes. The last strategy is to find the actual will. Here are some of the places we went to aid in that search. These are the links to many of the sources I referred to as I prepared this presentation. All are worth a good visit. This slide is links to several online indexes and image collections that may be of use depending on where your ancestors lived. I am sure there are more. These are all very great resources because many of them have not only an index but also the image. One parting thought for any and all collections, it is very important to be aware of the scope and date range of the data set. Never assume that the set is complete. If you don't find what you are looking for, you will need to try different avenues and possibly what I call the Thomas Maris method to finding the will. Even then, the record sets are not always exhaustive. If you are still having trouble finding wills, I am available on Tuesdays from 12 noon to 6 p.m. Mountain Time at the BYU Family History Library. You can go to our virtual family history help and ask for Vivien Brown. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you, everybody.